CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and you are listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. This is episode number 17, and we're going to be continuing our series on things to do on HF. And we're going to do that by talking about SOTA. So, what is SOTA? SOTA means Summits on the Air. And it's an awards program designed probably by amateur radio for amateur radio. It was started back in Great Britain back in 2002, but it has since gone worldwide. The program was designed to encourage amateur radio operators to operate from a temporary location, generally on top of a mountain. Now, this is different from things like field day, because in field day you're sitting in a park, or you're sitting in a parking lot, or you're sitting in a campsite, or an EOC, or at your house. And yes, you're using possibly using non-commercial power, or running off of batteries or a generator or whatever, or if you are an EOC, commercial power. The difference is that normally with field day or other QSO parties, you're running the big rigs. You're running the ones that pump out 100 watts or 1,000 watts, and you have a nice desk set up and a computer set up, and maybe a network if you have more than one person. The difference between that and what SOTA is that everything that you need, you have to carry. And you can't use commercial power or any kind of motorized generated power. So that means no generator. And that means no shoreline power, what it's called. That means you have to use batteries. You have to use solar panels to charge those batteries, or wind power or something like that. So, basically, everything that you need you have to carry, and you generally carry it in a backpack. Now we're talking about radios, we're talking about antennas, batteries, and anything else that you might need. We're going to be diving a little bit further into that a little bit later in this episode. One of the other requirements, I guess, of the SOTA award is that whenever you go to activate a summit, it can't be reached by a motorized vehicle. That means you have to hoof it. And everything that you need you have to carry, so that's going to make it even worse. So, there you go. So there's three types of people that deal with this award. The first type of person that you have is an activator. And an activator is those people that will climb the summit, they'll set up their station, and they'll start transmitting. And they'll wait for people to make contact with them, much like you do with field day or any other QSO party type thing. The difference is that these activators, they have radios that are less than 10 watts. They are running on battery power. They have a temporary antenna set up. They might be logging on a piece of paper or a small tablet, or possibly even a computer. They'll be sitting on a rock or on the ground and using the rock as their table. They won't have the general comforts that we normally do on things like field day. And typically they're probably going to be alone. Maybe there might be one or two people that are there. Probably not, though. Most of the time it's kind of a lonely type thing, I imagine. The second type of people that are deal with SOTA is the chasers. Now, without the activators, there wouldn't be a need for chasers, and without the chasers, there wouldn't be a need for activators. So, chasers are the people like you and me that are at home or in your car, in your ham shack, at your club shack, wherever you are, other than sitting on top of this mountain, and you're making contact with these people that have climbed this mountain and have set up this temporary station. So you're the ones that are at home. They're the ones that are out in the bad weather, or good weather, or looking at the beautiful view or whatever. But they're the ones that are up on top of the mountain. So activators and chasers, kind of a symbiotic, however you say that word, relationship. The third one is generally non-amateur radio operators, and they're called shortwave listeners. These people will listen to the QSOs and the exchanges on those QSOs between the activators and the chasers. They'll copy down that information and submit it in a log, and they'll get points for it as well. Now, they don't get the awards that the activators and the chasers will, that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, but they do get on the thing called the honor roll. And there is an honor roll for each three categories: the activators, chasers, and the shortwave listeners. So if they can't make the contact, then at least they can get on the shortwave listener honor roll. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about the summits. Okay, when the activators choose a summit, they're going to choose it for several different reasons. Maybe it's for closeness, maybe it's for point value, maybe it's for a certain bonus point that they're going to get. Okay, and different summits have different points value, and typically the way that a summit will be categorized or assigned a point value is by height. And you may have a summit that's 10,000 feet, and it's in level 3, so it's worth X amount of points. But let's say that you have two mountains, and you're trying to figure out where you're going to activate, and you have two mountains that are relatively close to you, and you want to figure out which one. And one of those summits is worth 10 points, and one of them is worth 5 points. They're both the same height. It's the same time of year, but one is worth different than the other one. The reason for that, more than likely, is because especially here in America, I don't know if this is the same everywhere, but here in America, if a summit is accessible by vehicle or more accessible than the other one, it's going to be worth less. So let's say you have a park or a rest stop or something like that that's within 100 feet of the summit vertically, and the other one you have to hike up from the base because there's only there's no road that goes up to the top. So the one that you have to hike up the entire way, carrying all your equipment on your back, is going to be worth more than the one where you can drive up to 9,900 feet and climb the rest of that 100 feet to get to 10,000. So it's going to be worth less, and for obvious reasons. If I'm doing this and I have my friend that's a couple miles away on the summit next to me, and he gets the same points as I do, but I had to climb the entire way with my backpack, with my 50 pounds of gear, and he got to drive his car most of the way up. That's not very fair, right? So there, yeah, I mean that's a good rule, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below. in the show notes. Now, the other thing that could change the value of a summit is what time of year it is. If you activate a summit in the summertime, when it's warm, it's going to be, say, 10 points. And you go back to that same summit in the wintertime, it might be worth 15 points. And the reason behind that is because maybe during the winter months, the summit generally have snow on it. So it's going to be a lot more challenging to make that climb to activate that summit. So you get bonus points for it. So that's cool. So as far as point values go, there's different things that you can get for those point values. And the activators and the chasers are the ones that actually have the awards. Like I said before, the honor roll, or the shortwave listeners, just have an honor roll list. As an activator, when you reach 1,000 points, you'll receive the Mountain Goat Award. Yeah, you heard me. Mountain Goat. So, yeah, I'm going to be a Mountain Goat when I reach 1,000 points. Okay, fine. It might be a little bit better than the Chasers, because the Chaser, whenever they reach 1,000 points, they get the Shack Sloth Award. So would I rather be a mountain goat that can climb, or would I rather be a shack sloth that sits in the comfort of my own home or my own ham shack and gets it? Yeah, I'm probably more the shack sloth than the mountain goat, but I think I would like to be the mountain goat better. Yeah. However, each of these categories, the activator, the chaser, and the shortwave listener, like I said before, does have an honor roll list of how many points each person has gotten, and so on and so forth. So, before we go on to equipment, let's take a short break. Okay, so, in this break, I got a couple things that I want to talk about. First and foremost, I have to say something about my wife. My wife recently started a blog. After me doing this for nearly 2 years, she's finally decided that she wanted to do it too. So she got the blog bug, as I call it. This blog is talking about our journey through the foster care system and through being new parents. And by new parents, I'm talking about parents to 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds, not necessarily new babies. We have had a newborn baby, and we currently have a 20-month-old and nearly a 3-year-old. But it's not always the case. We don't always have babies. So this blog that she's putting up is basically covering different things in the foster care system, different issues that come up with the kids, and general parenting type advice stuff. So, as a shameless plug for my wife's new blog, if you're interested in any of this stuff, check out her blog. It's morethansafe.com. morethansafe.com. There will be links in the show notes for this episode. And if you're there and you like what you see, subscribe to her email list. She gets ecstatic every time somebody subscribes. So if you want to, please subscribe. Alrighty. I mentioned last week that the cost of running my blog and my podcast is ever increasingly growing. And I made a page on Patreon, or Patreon, or however you say it, where you can help if you want to. And it's a monthly subscription, and you can donate $1 a month, $5, $10, $25, are the levels that I have set up. So if you feel so inclined to help me financially maintain this blog and creating the content that I do, head on over there, everythinghamradio.com/Patreon. That's Patreon. Again, there will be a link in the show notes to that. If you don't want to do like a monthly subscription, you can also just donate directly through PayPal. There is a button at the bottom of the show notes to do that. And again, I would like to thank Cody Williamson, Kilo Golf 5, Charlie Echo Whiskey. Yeah, I think I got it right that time. For another $10 donation that he sent me this past week. It is greatly appreciated, Cody. Yeah, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Last on my list is something that y'all probably have been waiting for. The Pack-10 giveaway. In the last episode, I received about 14 entries, I believe it was, for this. And this is your second chance to get a second entry into the Pack-10 mini giveaway. So, what should the phrase for this week be? Okay, the subject line of the email. First off, send me an email. This is the way it works. Send me an email to k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. In the subject line, I want you to put the name of the award that an activator will receive once they reach 1,000 points. So, put in the subject line what the name of the award is when an activator reaches 1,000 points. So let's see if you're listening. So send me an email with that. You will have until April the 15th. Not April, May the 15th, 2016, which will be, 4 days after this podcast goes live. There was a few extra days in there because I made an up-o and released last episode a little early. But you'll have until the 15th at midnight. No, 15th at like 1 a.m. or something like that, because I'm going to be recording the next episode on the 15th. I will be picking a random number generator and selecting a random number between 1 and however many entries we have, and that is how you will win. And I will be contacting you shortly and announcing it on the podcast episode number 18 on May the 17th. So, there you go. There is this, how you enter into the Pack-10 mini giveaway for this episode. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. Let's talk about equipment. What equipment do you need to be an activator? Now, we're not really going to talk about chasers because your home station qualifies for the equipment that you're going to have. But let's talk about activator. Excuse me 1 second. I had to take a drink there. My mouth is like totally parched. Okay, so first and foremost, you need a radio, right? That's kind of a duh type thing. Now, the question is, what kind of radio and what radio should you use? You have a couple options. Actually, you have quite a few options. And I have never done this myself. I don't really do QRP. I don't really do HF a whole lot. But during research of this, I have come across several pages for the SOTA and listing of people's SOTA bags and the equipment that they have. And it increasingly, I noticed there was one radio that was recommended more than any other. Actually, there's two radios really, but the top one was the Elecraft KX3, and it seemed like a really neat little radio. So that would be one. Second that I found was the Yaesu FT817ND. And this little radio, it's a QRP rig. It has, I believe it has 8 watts transmit. It has a built-in battery. So it's basically made for people on the go, not for really putting in your car or something like that. Now, there are other QRP transceivers. There's kits that you can buy that you can use for this. But just remember that you're not going to have 100 watts power when you're up there running off a battery. You're going to have 5-10 watts max. Now, without the next thing, there's no use in having the radio, and that would be power. And like we talked about before, you can't have commercial power to activate a SOTA summit, so you have to have a battery. And if you plan on working any length of time, you're probably going to need some way to charge that battery, be it a solar cell or some kind of small wind turbine if that's what you want to bring. Solar power is probably the best way to do it, though. Now, when you choose the battery, there's really two things that you need to look at. First and foremost, most of the radios are going to be using 12 volt, which is not that hard to find. The second thing that you need to look at is how many amp hours the battery is. If you find a battery that is, say, 9 amp hours, that means it's going to run for about 9 hours at some duty cycle. I don't know the thing right off the top of my head. So 12 volt DC and how many amp hours the battery is. Those are the two things that you need to look at. Actually, two of the three things that you need to look at. When you're choosing your battery and you find a decent size amp hours, you also need to look at weight, because like I've said many times so far in this podcast, you're going to be carrying everything that you're going to use. So you need something that's going to be fairly lightweight, something that puts out 12 volts, and something that's going to last you for a little bit. So the amp hour versus the weight of the battery is really going to be your deciding factor on what battery to use. And this might not only power your radio, it might power a flashlight or a computer or something like that too. So it all goes on how much weight you want to carry. And if memory serves me correctly, back in my high school, junior high days, when I was in my youth club, I seem to remember that it's supposed to be no more than a third of your body weight in order to go hiking. Something like that. So anyways, the third item in the must-have trifecta is your antenna. You have your radio, you have your power. If you don't have an antenna, neither one of them are much good. Now, the antenna, you also need to worry about weight, but you also need to worry about size. Size is a major factor because you don't know, are you going to have a vertical antenna? Are you going to have a wire antenna? Are you going to have an inverted V or a delta loop or what? This is where the Pactenna Mini comes into play. This little Pactenna Mini is really neat little antenna. And I cannot wait to get it in because I really want to see this thing. I've seen pictures of it, and I saw a picture of it in my good buddy Kale's hand a few weeks ago. And this thing is basically the size of his hand. I mean, it's tiny. So it's perfect to be used for SOTA because it's not going to take up much room in your backpack and it's not going to take up much weight. But it still gets great performance on the air. So Pactenna is my recommendation on anybody's SOTA pack. Yeah, that's what it is. But like I said, I've never done SOTA, so take that as you will. But I'm going to make a strong recommendation that Pactenna is the antenna that you buy for your SOTA pack or your Go pack or your Field Day pack or whatever. But now that we've talked about the must-have trifecta, what else should you bring? Well, you need something to log with, right? I mean, it's not going to be much use if you go up there on top of the mountain and you make 50 contacts and you don't know who you talked to when you got back down. Because if you don't log these contacts, you're not going to get points for them. So, yeah, you need something to write with. You need something to log with, whether that be a pen and paper or pencil and paper, whether that be an iPhone with some ham logging software, or a tablet or iPad or something like that, maybe even a laptop. You're going to need some sort of navigation. Now, whether that be the old-fashioned way of a paper map and a compass, whether that be a GPS or your phone with a navigation application, you need some kind of navigation. You need a first aid kit. In case something happens to you, you get cut, or you sprain an ankle or something like that, or if you have somebody else with you, if they get hurt. You need some kind of illumination, like a flashlight or one of those little headband LED light things, or a lantern, or something like that. Some way to see if it's going to be nighttime or it's going to be dark. You're going to need sunscreen. You're going to need sunscreen to make sure that you don't get a sunburn, because the higher up you go, the more easier it's going to be to burn, because the sun rays have less atmosphere to travel through, so it's going to burn easier, I believe, is the way that it goes. You might want to bring some extra food, or like a granola bar, or an extra sandwich, or something like that. You also need water, whether you carry a bottled water or whether you carry some kind of filtration system that you can dip into a spring or a river or something like that. You need a emergency shelter, and this might be just a small pop-up tent, or it could be just a tarp where you can cover up, or you can really go all out and get like one of those firefighter emergency shelter things where you just kind of snap it and the whole thing pops up and you climb inside. Those are expensive though. You need some kind of signaling device, like a mirror or a radio that maybe is on a different frequency, like an FRS radio or something. You also need to tell your family where you're going. You need to make sure you have a plan before you leave. Like, I'm going to be back at 5 o'clock, and if you don't hear from me before then, call for help. Make sure you tell your significant other where you're going to be and the road that you're going to be taking, especially if you're going up in mountains with the the windy roads and stuff like that. So communicate with your significant others. Men, listen, this is good information here. Keep you out of the doghouse. There is a few links on the show notes for this episode with different people's SOTA packs and what to bring. So there's that, and I've also included some links to the official SOTA website, the North American division of the SOTA website, and several other links. There's a SOTA Watch website that you can go to that will give you information on SOTA activations. And there's also a mapping project, a SOTA mapping project, that uses Google Maps, I believe, and shows where the different summits are that you can activate, what their point values for there are, upcoming ones, stuff like that. So head on over to the show notes for this episode. As usual, you can find them at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/17. That's number 17. And you can get links to all these things. That about wraps it up for the SOTA part of this episode. Let's move along to our Amateur Radio Club Spotlight. Alright, so the Amateur Radio Club spotlight for this episode is on the Cedar Valley Amateur Radio Club in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You can find their website at w0gq.org. That's Whiskey Zero Golf Quebec.org. They have a Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/CVARC. Their meetings is on the second Tuesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. at the Kenwood Park United Methodist Church at 175 34th Street Northeast, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That would be a really cool place to have a meeting, at a place called Kenwood, even though it's Kenwood Park. They did not have any nets listed on their website. I'm sure they probably do have nets, but they didn't have any listed. They do, however, have 5 repeaters. They have a 146.745 repeater with a negative offset. There is no PL tone on it. The 145.15 repeater has a negative offset with a 192.8 PL tone. They have a 147.090 repeater. It has a positive offset since it's above 147, and it has a 192.8 PL tone. It also has an echo link on it. You can find that at Whiskey Zero Whiskey Sierra Victor Romeo. They have a 224.94 repeater with a negative offset of 192.8 tone, and a 443.6 repeater, positive offset, and a 192.8 tone. They all have 192.8 tones except for the 146.745. It does if there is interference. However, there will be announcements on there saying that it does have a tone. So this club seems like a pretty active club. They do marathons, full and half marathons. Sometimes they do that simultaneously, it says. They have smaller runs and fundraising walks. They assist with emergency management during drills, primarily pertaining to their local nuclear power plant. I feel them there. I work in a county that has a nuclear power plant. They have triathlons, typically 2 times per year. Holiday events with city officials. Field day. They have a annual Ham Fest. This year is on August 7th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And they actually have a mini fest, a junk in the trunk mini fest is what they call it, and it's coming up on the 14th, which will be the Saturday after this episode releases. It goes from 8 in the morning till, I want to say, 1 p.m. My notes say 10, but I don't think that's right. I believe it's 1. And if you are in the Cedar Rapids area, you can find them at 855 34th Street Northeast. They're in Cedar Rapids. And, of course, they do other things as well. That is our club spotlight for this episode. Again, it's on the Cedar Valley Amateur Radio Club. Alright, so one more quick announcement before we close this episode. I recently became aware of a fellow Ham's video blog. And the funny part is he actually lives maybe 30, 40, 50 miles tops from me. And his intro music is the same as my intro music. And even though he doesn't use it as extensively as I do, it is very recognizable for my intro and outro music. So I'm going to be looking for some of the type of intro music. Mainly because I want to make sure that my podcast is unique and doesn't get it confused or doesn't copy anybody else. And I actually went back and listened to some of his video blogs, and he actually started using this about 2 weeks before my podcast went live. So he had it first, so now I am going to go with a different intro music. I am going to be working on that here in the coming week or so. I will probably continue to use this intro music maybe through this month. Give me time to make new intro and outro music. Maybe start the new one on episode 20. Not really sure if I get it done before then I might go live before that, but definitely my goal is to do it before episode 20. So I guess that's about it. Please check out the show notes for all the links that I've mentioned in this episode. everythinghamradio.com/podcast/17. Also subscribe to my blog and my podcast. You can subscribe to my blog at the bottom of the show notes, or you can go to everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. Fill out that form, click sign me up, and you'll be sent an email. You'll need to click on the confirmation link in that email before you'll start receiving emails from me regarding new posts that I put out. Also, please check out my wife's blog, morethansafe.com. She really gets a kick out of the seeing how many people view her site, especially since it's only been up about 2 weeks now. So she's getting the blogging bug, and she's really enjoying it, and I am so happy that she actually has a hobby now to do. So like me on Facebook and Twitter. You can find me at facebook.com/everythinghamradio, or you can follow me on Twitter, and you can follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. Follow this, or you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. It is now on Google Play as well for you Android users, and you could also listen to it directly from the website as well. So I guess that is about it for this episode. I really want to thank all of y'all for listening, and please check out the show notes. A lot more information than what I just have here on this episode. So until next time, this is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike signing out. 73.